She disappeared after one night. Years later, the Millionaire CEO found her raising his triplet daughters. Hi, my beautiful and loyal family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter's family. May the Almighty cloak every woman in courage that never fades, mercy that never ends, and peace that guards her heart like a shield. May every broken moment turn into a doorway of blessings, and every unspoken hurt rise again as strength, honor, and quiet victory. You are the dawn after the longest night, the tenderness that heals homes, and the heartbeat that keeps generations standing. May your steps be guided, your spirit unburdened, and your soul held gently in divine protection. My precious family, don't fall silent tonight. Your voices light the lamps of this home. A like is a prayer of unity, a comment, a bond of love. This is Mission 1000 likes for every woman who rises, forgives, fights, and believes again. If you carry love in your heart like this video, if your faith walks beside you, comment, "I'm with Mr. Peter." She vanished after one night, but when the Millionaire CEO found her again, she was raising his secret triplet daughters. Some nights change everything. Rain doesn't whisper in Harlem. It screams against windows, drums on fire escapes, turns streets into mirrors that reflect neon signs and broken dreams. Tyra Banks stood beneath a single spotlight in the back room of Midnight Blues, her fingers wrapped around a microphone that had seen better decades, and sang like her rent depended on it. Because it did. Don't know why there's no sun up in the sky, stormy weather. The words poured from her throat, raw and aching, carrying every bill she couldn't pay, every hospital visit with her grandmother, every casting director who said she was talented but not quite right. Not quite white enough, not quite polished enough, not quite whatever invisible quality separated dreams from reality. The audience was sparse, a handful of regulars nursing whiskey, a couple holding hands in the corner, and one man who didn't belong. Brent King sat alone at a table near the back, water dripping from his coat onto polished shoes that cost more than most people's monthly salary. He'd fled from his mother's suffocating dinner party, from another woman she'd paraded before him like livestock at auction, from the expectation that he'd marry someone appropriate and produce acceptable heirs. The conversation had been about bloodlines and business mergers, about maintaining standards and preserving legacy. Nothing about love, nothing about actual human connection. He'd walked blocks in the rain, needing air, needing escape, needing something real in a life that felt increasingly like performance art. Then he'd stumbled into this hidden speakeasy, where velvet curtains absorbed sound and the music hit him like absolution. The singer's voice wrapped around his chest and squeezed. She wasn't polished. She was real. Her eyes were closed, her body swaying, completely lost in the melody. Beautiful didn't begin to describe her. She was truth set to music, vulnerability transformed into power, everything his manufactured life lacked. When the song ended, scattered applause filled the room. Tyra opened her eyes, gave a small bow, and stepped off the makeshift stage. She was heading toward the back when a voice stopped her. That was extraordinary. She turned. The man from the expensive table stood there, hands in his pockets, looking at her like she'd just changed his entire understanding of sound. Water still dripped from his coat. His eyes held something desperate. Thanks. She moved a step past him. Rich men in speakeasies usually wanted one thing, and she wasn't selling. Wait, please. I'm Brent. He extended his hand. I needed to tell you that your voice is the most honest thing I've heard in years, maybe ever. Something in his tone made her pause. Not smooth, not practiced, just achingly lonely. Tyra. She shook his hand. His grip was warm, solid, human. You running from something? You've got that look. He laughed, surprised and genuine. That obvious? Soaked coat, expensive shoes, sitting alone in a place like this watching jazz singers like they might save your life. Either running or hiding, sometimes both. Both, he admitted, relief flooding his expression at being understood so quickly. You? Same. She glanced toward the bar where her boss was signaling last call. But I've got to close up. Rent doesn't pay itself, and neither does my grandmother's medication. Can I buy you coffee? Somewhere all night? I promise I'm not. He struggled for words, aware how this must sound. I just don't want to go back to my life yet, and I'd like to hear you talk the way you sing, honest, real, unfiltered. Every instinct told her to say no. She had early classes to teach, bills to sort, exhaustion pulling at her bones like gravity. But something in his eyes, genuine, desperate, achingly human, made her nod. 1 coffee, that's it. 1 coffee became 3. They sat in a diner booth while the city slowly woke around them and talked about everything that mattered. He told her about building something from nothing, about creating renewable energy solutions that actually worked, only to have it swallowed by family expectations and board politics. She told him about her grandmother's illness, about choosing music over security, about refusing to give up even when everything said she should. My mother thinks love is a contract, Brent said, stirring cold coffee. Sign here, produce heirs, maintain appearances. She's got my whole life mapped like a business plan. Meet the right woman by 30, married by 32, first heir by 34, everything calculated. Sounds lonely. Terrifying, he corrected, because part of me wants to just surrender, do what's expected, stop fighting, let them win and live the comfortable lie. Then you die, Tyra said simply, holding his gaze. Maybe your heart keeps beating, but you'd be dead inside. I've seen it happen. People who stop fighting for what matters, they become ghosts walking around in expensive clothes. He looked at her like she'd spoken light into darkness. How do you stay so fierce? Life has obviously knocked you down. Because giving up means they win. All the people who said I wasn't good enough, smart enough, connected enough. My grandmother taught me that dignity isn't something people give you, it's something you claim and refuse to surrender, no matter how hard they try to take it. She cleaned houses for 50 years and never let anyone make her feel small. Dawn was breaking when they left the diner. Rain had stopped. The city smelled clean, new, full of possibility. Garbage trucks rumbled past. Early risers headed to subway stations. The world was transforming around them. I should go, Tyra said, though she didn't move. I don't want this to end. Brent's voice was barely above a whisper. This conversation, this night, this feeling that maybe I'm not completely alone in the world, that maybe there's someone who understands what it feels like to live a life that doesn't fit. She looked up at him, saw vulnerability and strength fighting for dominance in his expression. Saw a man who'd probably never been truly seen by anyone. Where do you live? Anywhere you'll let me follow. They walked to her tiny apartment in silence, hands occasionally brushing, electric current flowing between them with each accidental touch. Inside, surrounded by second-hand furniture and plants she'd rescued from sidewalks, Tyra turned to face him. This doesn't make sense, she whispered. Nothing about tonight makes sense. He cupped her face gently, reverently. But it's the first real thing I've felt in years. Maybe the first real thing ever. When they kissed, the world rearranged itself. Tender became desperate. Desperate became essential. They made love like drowning people finding air, clinging to each other, breathing each other's names, building something fragile and perfect in the space between darkness and dawn. Every touch was conversation, every kiss was confession, every moment was choosing honesty over safety. Afterward, wrapped in sheets that had seen better days, Tyra traced patterns on his chest while morning light crept through cheap curtains. What happens when the sun comes up? She asked quietly. I don't know. Brent pulled her closer, breathing in the scent of her hair. But right now, this is everything, you're everything. They fell asleep, tangled together, believing sunrise might never come, believing maybe they'd found something worth keeping, but it did. Brent's phone shattered the peace with relentless vibration. He fumbled for it, saw 17 missed calls from his mother, then a text that made his blood freeze. Your father collapsed. Come home immediately. This is not negotiable. I have to go. He was already pulling on clothes, hands shaking, panic erasing every moment of peace they'd built. My father, something's wrong. I'm so sorry. Tyra sat up, clutching the sheet, watching him panic and knowing exactly how this would end. I'll call you, he promised, kissing her desperately, trying to memorize her face. I swear, I'll... He was gone before finishing the sentence, door slamming behind him, leaving only silence and the ghost of his presence. Tyra sat in the sudden emptiness, heart pounding. Then she saw it. Cash on her nightstand. Crisp bills arranged neatly beneath a note scrawled in rushed handwriting. I'm sorry. My family needs me. You deserve better than what I can give. She read it 3 times before the words registered. Before understanding crashed over her like cold water, before realizing she'd been exactly what she'd feared. A moment of escape, a transaction, a comfort he'd paid for and left behind. Then she picked up the money with shaking hands, walked to her sink and burned every bill while tears streamed down her face, while something inside her hardened into armor she'd never remove. The smoke detector screamed as loud as her breaking heart, and Tyra Banks learned that some nights change everything, but not always the way you hope. Chapter 2. The Weight of Secrets. Tyra stared at 3 positive pregnancy tests lined up on her bathroom counter like accusations. 6 weeks had passed since that night, and her body was telling her what her heart already knew. Nothing that perfect could exist without consequences. This can't be happening. Her best friend Laurel stood in the doorway, face pale. You're absolutely sure? Doctor confirmed it yesterday. Tyra's voice was hollow. Triplets, 3 babies, from one night with a man who left me cash like I was a transaction. But Tyra felt profoundly alone. She'd tried finding Brent. His name had led her to a company downtown, but when she called, she was told he was unavailable indefinitely due to family circumstances. Mr. King isn't seeing anyone, the guard had said firmly when she went in person. No exceptions. She'd tried twice more before the receptionist recognized her. Ma'am, if you continue this harassment, we'll have to involve legal counsel. Harassment. The word had struck like a physical slap. On her 4th attempt, she'd made it as far as the lobby before a woman in a designer suit and cold eyes approached. I'm Constance King. I understand you've been attempting to contact my son. Hope flared in Tyra's chest. Yes, ma'am. I just need to speak with him. It's extremely important. I'm sure it is. Constance's smile was ice sculpted into expression. Let me be perfectly clear. My son is dealing with a family crisis. His father suffered a massive stroke. Brent has responsibilities that matter. We've dealt with opportunists before, young women who think one night with a wealthy man entitles them to a fortune. I'm not looking for money, I just need... Harassment will be met with legal action. Constance spoke over her like she was background noise. If you truly care about my son's well-being, you'll disappear, unless you'd prefer your name circulated to every media outlet as another desperate woman chasing wealth. I have connections, Miss Banks. Powerful ones. This conversation is your only warning. Am I understood? Tyra had left shaking with humiliation and rage. That night she'd packed what little she owned and booked a bus ticket to Georgia, to a coastal town where her grandmother had grown up, where nobody knew her story. Laurel moved down with her without question. You're not doing this alone, she'd insisted. I can teach dance anywhere you need family, and I'm it. The pregnancy was brutal. Carrying 3 babies felt like her body was waging war against itself. Morning sickness lasted all day. Her back screamed constantly. But Tyra worked anyway because bills didn't pause for difficult pregnancies. She taught piano lessons from a rented room, waitressed at the local diner despite swollen ankles, saved every penny. Some nights she fell asleep standing up. Some mornings she cried before getting out of bed. But she never stopped moving forward. You need to rest, the doctor warned during a difficult checkup. Your blood pressure is concerning. Resting doesn't pay bills, Tyra replied. When labor started 3 weeks early, it lasted 19 brutal hours. Laurel held her hand through every contraction, every scream, every moment when Tyra was certain she wouldn't survive this. Then the first cry pierced the air, then the second, then the third. You have 3 healthy girls, the nurse announced, placing the first tiny bundle against Tyra's chest. Tyra looked down at the wrinkled, perfect face and felt her entire world realign. Nothing mattered, except this moment. Cher, she whispered, naming her firstborn after the singer who'd taught her that strength came in unexpected packages. The second baby had wide, curious eyes. Ty, Tyra murmured, thinking of a childhood friend who'd been fearlessly creative. The third was smaller but feisty, already squirming with determination. Dion, you're my little warrior, aren't you? Laurel wiped tears from her eyes. They're absolutely beautiful. They're mine. Tyra kissed each tiny forehead with fierce possessiveness, and nobody will ever make them feel unwanted or less than. Not his family, not him, not the whole damn world. She stayed in the hospital recovering, nursing 3 infants, learning to function on fractured sleep. Other mothers had partners visiting, bringing flowers. Tyra had Laurel and the unshakable conviction that she would build a life worth living from the ashes of her broken heart. On their first night home, Tyra sat in a second-hand rocking chair with all 3 babies somehow balanced in her arms and made them a promise that became her foundation. You will know love, real, unconditional, fierce love. You'll know that you matter because of who you are, not what you can provide or prove. You'll know strength and joy and the absolute certainty that you were wanted. I may not be able to give you everything the world says matters, but I'll give you that, always. Cher yawned, tiny and perfect. Ty made a small sound like agreement. Dion slept peacefully, trusting completely. And Tyra rocked them through the night, building a kingdom from nothing but determination and a mother's love that wouldn't break no matter how hard the world pushed. Months blurred into exhaustion and wonder. 3 babies meant triple everything. Feedings every few hours, diapers that never ended, laundry that reproduced overnight. Tyra's piano students grew as word spread about the talented teacher who worked magic with children, who made music accessible, who charged based on what families could afford. She started teaching group classes, then added voice lessons, then opened a tiny music school in a rented storefront that had been a failed bookstore. She painted the walls herself while the babies slept, creating a space that felt like possibility. The sign above the door read, Harmony House Music School, where every voice matters. Laurel taught movement and dance in the back room. They kept prices low, offered scholarships to anyone who asked, and slowly built something beautiful. Parents who couldn't afford lessons traded services, plumbing repairs, homemade meals, babysitting. The community wrapped around them like a quilt. You're building something incredible, Laurel said, watching Tyra teach a shy child to find their voice. I'm building a life they can be proud of, Tyra corrected. A life that proves we don't need his money or his family or anything except each other. But sometimes, late at night, when the girls finally slept and silence felt like presence, Tyra would remember that one perfect night. She'd remember how Brent had looked at her like she mattered. She'd remember feeling less alone. Then she'd remember the cash on her nightstand, the humiliation in that office lobby, the certainty that she and her babies would only ever be problems to solve, and she'd harden her heart all over again. She didn't need him. Her daughters didn't need him. They had each other, and that was enough. It had to be enough. Chapter 3. Building Kingdoms in Silence. Cher was explaining architecture to her stuffed animals. See, if you build it tall but not strong, it falls, like this. She demonstrated with blocks, then looked at her sisters seriously. We gotta be both tall and strong. Ty wasn't listening. She was painting their bedroom wall with watercolors she'd made from smashed berries, creating a mural of flowers that didn't exist in nature. "Mama's gonna be mad," she sang softly, not stopping. "Mama's always mad when you paint walls," Dion observed from where she was attempting handstands. "But she never stays mad long." Tyra stood in the doorway watching her daughters, overwhelmed by how quickly they'd grown. They were forces of nature, each completely themselves, Cher, with her serious eyes and protective instincts. Ty, lost in creative worlds only she could see. Dion, fearless and wild, throwing herself at life with absolute confidence. "Ty, baby, we've talked about painting walls," Tyra said gently. "But they're so boring white," Ty protested. "They need stories. Then we'll get you a canvas, a big one, but walls stay white." "Okay, Mama." Ty immediately lost interest in the wall and started painting her own arms instead. Harmony House had grown beyond anything Tyra imagined. They'd moved to a larger space, hired 2 more teachers, expanded programs to include after-school care and summer workshops. The school served over 60 children now, most from families who struggled like Tyra once had. She kept prices low, stretched every dollar, and somehow made it work through sheer willpower. "You should be proud," Laurel said during a rare, quiet moment. "You've created something that changes lives." "I'm just doing what needs doing." Tyra was reviewing scholarship applications, trying to figure out how to accept 3 more students when they could barely afford current expenses. "You're a miracle worker, and those girls worship you." Tyra smiled. "They're my everything." Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Brent King sat through another dinner party that felt like slow death. His mother had invited the daughter of a prominent family, a perfectly pleasant woman who spoke about charity work with practiced enthusiasm that never reached her eyes. Brent made appropriate responses while feeling nothing. His father sat in a wheelchair nearby, partially recovered but forever changed. The stroke had stolen his speech and left him dependent on nurses. Constance had transformed their home into a showcase for her son's availability, parading eligible women through like auditions. "She's lovely, isn't she?" Constance whispered to Brent. "Her family's impeccable. The wedding could be spectacular." "I'm not marrying someone because their family is impeccable," Brent said quietly. "Then marry her because it's time. You're not getting younger. I need grandchildren. Your father needs to see the family line secured before—" She didn't finish, letting the implications hang heavy. Brent excused himself, retreating to his study where investigators' reports sat in a locked drawer. He'd hired 3 different people over the years to find Tyra Banks. Each had failed. She'd vanished completely, leaving no trail. It was like she'd been erased from existence. He thought about her constantly. That night remained the most real thing he'd ever experienced. He'd tried to find her immediately after his father stabilized, but she was gone. His mother claimed no one had come looking for him, that he was imagining things, that grief was making him chase fantasies. "You left her money," Constance had said coldly. "What kind of woman accepts cash and disappears? She was exactly what she appeared to be. Be grateful she's gone." But Brent didn't feel grateful. He felt haunted. He went through motions, attending events, managing investments, fulfilling obligations, while feeling hollow inside. Every jazz singer reminded him of Tyra's voice. Every genuine laugh reminded him of her honesty. Every forced conversation reminded him he'd lost the only real connection he'd ever made. His father watched him with knowing eyes, unable to speak, but communicating volumes through small gestures. During one particularly awful dinner party, his father had gripped Brent's hand with surprising strength and shaken his head slowly as if saying, "Don't do this, don't live my life." But what choice did Brent have? His mother controlled everything through guilt and manipulation. His father needed constant care. The family expected certain things, and the woman he couldn't forget had vanished like a dream. He stood by his window that night, looking out at the city lights, wondering if Tyra was out there somewhere, if she ever thought about that night, if she'd found the happiness her talent deserved, if she'd forgiven him for leaving money like payment he hoped she had, even if it meant she'd forgotten him completely. Back in Georgia, Tyra was reading bedtime stories to 3 exhausted girls who fought sleep like enemies. "One more chapter," Cher negotiated. "You said that 3 chapters ago," Tyra laughed, closing the book. "But this time I really mean it," Cher insisted with perfect seriousness. "Tomorrow," Tyra promised, kissing foreheads. "Tomorrow we'll read more adventures." Ty was already asleep, paint still smudged on her cheek. Dion was barely hanging on, eyes drooping despite her determination. "Will you tell us about our daddy tomorrow?" Dion asked suddenly, words slurred with sleep. The question hit like unexpected cold water. The girls had started asking occasionally, seeing other children with fathers at school events, wondering about their own story. "Your daddy lives far away," Tyra said carefully. "He doesn't know about you, but that's okay, because we have each other, and we're a family." "Don't we need a daddy to be a family?" Cher asked, ever practical. "Family is people who love you and show up for you every single day. That's me. That's Aunt Laurel. That's all the people at Harmony House who care about you. Biology doesn't make family. Love does." "Okay." Cher accepted this, satisfied. But later, after they slept, Tyra sat alone, wondering if she'd made the right choice. Should she have tried harder to find Brent? Should she have fought past his mother's threats? Then she remembered the cash on her nightstand, the humiliation in that office lobby, the certainty that she and her babies would only ever be problems to solve. No, she'd made the right choice. Her daughters deserved better than being unwanted complications. They deserved to be celebrated, not hidden, loved, not tolerated. And if that meant raising them alone, building everything from nothing, working until exhaustion became normal, then that's exactly what she'd do, because they were worth it. They were worth everything. Chapter 4. When Worlds Collide. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning when Tyra was running late and covered in oatmeal from breakfast chaos. Official letterhead announced that Harmony House Music School had been nominated for the National Arts Education Foundation Excellence Award. Tyra read it 3 times before believing it was real, before understanding what it meant. "This is incredible," Laurel shrieked when she arrived, dancing around the tiny office like she'd lost her mind. "Do you know what this means? The grant alone could fund scholarships for years, full scholarships for every kid who needs one." "The ceremony's in New York." Tyra's stomach twisted violently. "I can't go to New York, I can't." "Why not? It's been 6 years. You haven't been back since—" Laurel stopped, understanding dawning across her face. He's probably not even there. The city's huge, and even if he is, so what? You've built an amazing life. Let him see what he missed. Let him see what you became without him. The girls were ecstatic when Tyra explained they'd be traveling to a big fancy party in a big fancy city where people will celebrate Mama's school. "Will there be princesses?" Ty asked hopefully, eyes shining with creative imagination. "Will there be food?" Dion wanted to know, always practical about important matters. "Will we have to wear dresses?" Cher looked deeply suspicious, already plotting escape routes from uncomfortable clothing. "Yes to dresses," Tyra confirmed, fighting a smile. "And yes to food. No guarantees on princesses, but you never know." They took the train, watching the landscape change outside the windows like watching life transform. The girls had never traveled beyond their small town, and everything amazed them. The speed of the train, the crowded stations, the towering buildings that seemed to touch clouds and scrape heaven itself. "Is this where you lived before?" Cher asked, pressing her face against the window. "For a little while. When I was younger and thought I could conquer the world through singing." "But you did conquer the world," Ty said seriously. "You conquered our world. That's better than the whole world, because we're in it." Tyra pulled her close, overwhelmed by love that felt too big for her body to contain. The award ceremony was held in a glittering ballroom that made Tyra's breath catch in her throat. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, people wearing clothes that cost more than her monthly rent. She'd borrowed a dress from Laurel, done her hair carefully, and tried to feel like she belonged among these elegant people with their practiced smiles and effortless confidence. The girls wore matching dresses Tyra had sewn herself, looking like small versions of sophistication despite Dion's insistence on wearing sneakers underneath because fancy shoes hurt and I'm not suffering for beauty. "Everyone stay close," Tyra instructed, gripping small hands firmly. "Hold on tight. Don't let go." Then the keynote speaker was introduced, and Tyra's entire world stopped rotating on its axis. Brent King walked onto the stage looking exactly like her memories, but different somehow, older, more polished, but less alive. Like someone had taken the vibrant man she'd known and replaced him with an expensive replica. He spoke about arts education, about giving children opportunities to discover their voices, about believing in human potential beyond profit margins and bottom lines. His words were beautiful and carefully crafted. His delivery was polished and professional, but his eyes were empty, and Tyra could see it even from across the vast room. She kept the girls behind a marble pillar, heart hammering so hard she thought people nearby must hear it echoing. She couldn't breathe properly, couldn't think clearly. The room felt too small and too large simultaneously, like space itself was malfunctioning. "Mama, you're squeezing too hard," Cher complained, pulling at her hand. "Sorry, baby." Tyra loosened her grip, but didn't let go, couldn't let go, needed the physical connection to keep herself anchored to reality. Brent's speech ended to enthusiastic applause that echoed off the high ceiling. He stepped down from the stage, and for one terrible, perfect, devastating moment, his eyes swept the crowd and landed directly on Tyra. Recognition slammed into his expression like physical impact. Shock, disbelief, something that looked like drowning relief mixed with absolute devastation. His face went pale, then flushed. His entire body oriented toward her like she was magnetic north and he'd been lost for years. He started moving through the crowd toward her, pushing past people in evening wear, clearly not caring about social niceties or appropriate behavior. Tyra panicked completely, gathering her girls like precious cargo, heading for the exit with singular focus. "We have to go, right now." "But they haven't announced the winners yet," Laurel protested, confused by the sudden urgency. "Now, Laurel, please trust me. We need to leave immediately." They fled into the New York night, Tyra practically running while pulling confused daughters along, fighting through crowds on sidewalks, searching desperately for a taxi. Her heart was a wild animal trying to escape her chest. She'd prepared herself for possibly seeing him from a distance. She hadn't prepared for the way time collapsed, for how intensely her body remembered his, for the overwhelming urge to either run toward him or run away and never stop running. "Why are we running?" Dion asked, stumbling to keep up, sneakers slapping pavement. "Because sometimes," Tyra said breathlessly, "life gets complicated, and the best thing to do is remove yourself from the situation before it gets worse." "What's complicated about a fancy party?" "Everything, baby. Everything." They caught a cab to their modest hotel, and Tyra locked the door behind them like it could keep reality out, like a simple lock could protect them from everything crashing down. The girls were disappointed and confused, excited energy draining into exhaustion. But she distracted them with room service and the novelty of hotel beds, of television in their own room, of ice machines in hallways. Later, after they finally slept, Tyra stood by the window looking out at the city lights, at the life she'd left behind, at everything that might have been. Her phone buzzed with messages from the foundation. They'd won the grant. She should be celebrating, calling everyone, planning how to use the money. Instead, she felt like the ground beneath her had turned liquid and she was sinking slowly. Somewhere in this massive city, Brent was probably trying to find her again, probably searching every database and making phone calls and leveraging every resource he had. Part of her wanted to be found, wanted to throw herself into his arms and sob about everything they'd lost. The rest of her wanted to grab her daughters and run until they reached some place he could never follow, some corner of the world where the past couldn't reach them. Because seeing him again hadn't killed the feelings like she'd hoped. It had reminded her they'd never actually died. They'd just been buried under hurt and necessity and the daily demands of survival. The love was still there, preserved perfectly like something frozen, waiting to thaw and destroy her all over again, and that terrified her more than anything in her entire life. Chapter 5. The Unraveling. Brent hired every investigator he could find, threw money at the problem like money solved everything. Within 3 days, he had her location, her life story, the music school she'd built from nothing but determination and talent. What he didn't have were answers to the questions burning through him like acid, eating away at everything he thought he understood. He drove to Georgia without telling anyone, showing up at Harmony House after classes ended when the building was quiet. Through the front window, he watched Tyra organizing sheet music, moving with the same grace he remembered, humming something under her breath. She looked tired but content, settled in a life she'd built without him. Then he knocked. She froze when she saw him through the glass. For a long moment, neither spoke, just stared at each other through a barrier that felt symbolic of everything between them. "You can't be here," she finally said, not opening the door, voice muffled but clear. "I've been looking for you for years." His voice cracked, despite his determination to stay calm. "Please, just talk to me. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking." "No. Leave. Go back to New York and your perfect life and forget you saw me." "Tyra, please, I saw you in New York. I thought I was hallucinating, thought grief had finally driven me mad, thought you were some ghost my mind created. But you were real, you were there. And then you disappeared again and I can't keep living without knowing why you left. Why you vanished like I imagined everything." She laughed, bitter and sharp enough to cut. "I vanished? You left me cash on a nightstand like I was a service you'd purchased, like I was something to be paid for and forgotten. I was terrified my father was dying. My mother was calling every 30 seconds, threatening to disown me if I didn't come immediately. I panicked and made the worst decision of my entire life. I thought the money would help, would show I cared. It showed exactly what you thought I was worth. What you thought that night was worth a few $100s and a note saying I deserved better than you could give. You were right about one thing, I deserved better than that. I came back for you." Brent's hands pressed against the glass, desperate. 2 days later, I came back to that apartment. You were gone. The landlord said you'd broken your lease and left no forwarding address. I've had investigators searching for years. You covered your tracks so completely it was like you'd never existed, like you'd been erased from the world. Your mother made sure I knew I didn't exist." The words came out harsh, years of pain condensed into sentences. "When I tried to reach you, she called me an opportunist, a harassment case waiting to happen. She threatened to destroy me if I didn't disappear, so I did. I gave her exactly what she wanted. I erased myself so thoroughly you'd never find the mess you'd made." Brent went pale, actually swaying like he might collapse. "What are you talking about? What did she say to you?" "Don't pretend you don't know. She met me in that lobby, looked at me like I was something disgusting she'd stepped in, and made it perfectly clear that you had important responsibilities, and I was nothing but a distraction to be eliminated. She said she'd dealt with women like me before, opportunists, gold diggers, problems. I never knew you came looking for me." Brent's voice was barely audible, wrecked completely. "My mother said, she told me I was chasing fantasies, that no one had tried to contact me, that grief was making me imagine connections that never existed. I thought you took the money and moved on, that I'd meant nothing to you except a night's entertainment." They stared at each other across the locked door, years of pain and misunderstanding finally visible, laid bare like wounds that had never properly healed. "Open the door," Brent said quietly, everything he felt naked in his voice. Please, let me explain. Let me apologize properly. Let me try to fix what I destroyed. You can't fix this. Too much time has passed. Too much hurt happened. Too much life was built without you. Then let me try anyway. I've spent 6 years half alive going through motions, thinking about that night and wondering if I imagined how perfect it was, wondering if you ever thought about me. If that connection was real or just something I needed so desperately I invented it. Every day, Tyra whispered before she could stop herself, before the walls she'd built could catch the words. I thought about you every single day and hated myself for it. Hated that I couldn't let go. Hated that I couldn't forget. She unlocked the door. They sat in her small office, surrounded by children's artwork and music books and the evidence of a life built from scratch. For hours, they finally had the conversation that should have happened 6 years ago, should have prevented everything that went wrong. Brent explained his father's stroke, the months of recovery, his mother's increasing control over every aspect of his life, how she'd manipulated him into taking over family obligations, paraded eligible women before him constantly, emotionally blackmailed him with his father's fragile health, how he'd searched desperately for Tyra only to hit dead ends at every turn. Tyra described her search, the humiliation of being turned away, the absolute certainty that she and her baby would only be problems in his perfect life, the choice to build something alone rather than fight a battle she couldn't win against people with unlimited resources. Wait, Brent stopped her. Baby, you were pregnant? Tyra froze, realizing her slip. The secret she'd guarded so carefully was suddenly visible, exposed by one careless word. I should have fought harder, Brent continued, not noticing her panic. I should have found you no matter what it took, should have questioned my mother's lies, should have trusted my instincts instead of letting guilt control me. I should have trusted that you'd want to know, Tyra countered, carefully steering away from dangerous territory, that you weren't your mother, that you deserved the chance to make your own choice instead of having it made for you. Know what? Brent asked, finally catching her earlier slip. You said baby. Were you pregnant? Is that why you were trying to reach me? Tyra's heart hammered. She couldn't do this, couldn't tell him yet, couldn't risk him wanting to meet the girls out of obligation rather than genuine desire. I thought I might be, she lied, hating herself for it. False alarm. Just stress and fear making me panic. Brent reached for her hand. She let him take it, feeling electricity arc between them exactly like before, like no time had passed, like they'd just left that diner at dawn. Can we start over? He asked, vulnerability raw in his expression. Not forget everything, but maybe try again, carefully. Build something real instead of something that fell apart because we were both too scared to fight for it? I don't know if I can trust you. The honesty hurt to speak, scraped her throat raw. You broke something in me when you left that money, made me feel purchased, cheap, forgettable. Then let me try to earn it back, however long it takes. Whatever I need to do, I'll prove I'm not that scared man who ran. I'll prove you can trust me not to destroy this again. Why? Why now, after all this time? Because seeing you again reminded me what being alive feels like, because I've been a ghost for 6 years, existing but not living. Because I can't go back to the half-life I was living. Even if you can't forgive me, even if we can never be what we might have been, I need you to know that you changed me. That night changed everything, and losing you has haunted every moment since. Tyra pulled her hand back, overwhelmed by feelings she'd tried to bury. This is too much. You can't just show up after 6 years and expect... I don't expect anything. I'm asking, begging, for a chance. For coffee, for conversation. For the possibility that maybe what we had wasn't completely destroyed. That maybe we could build something new from the pieces. Against every self-protective instinct, against the voice screaming at her to protect herself and her daughters, Tyra heard herself say, "One coffee, that's all I'm promising, nothing more. That's all I'm asking, one coffee, one conversation, one chance to show you I'm different now." They agreed to meet the next day at a cafe downtown. Tyra went home shaking, terrified she'd just made a catastrophic mistake, knowing she needed to tell him about the girls, but not knowing how, not knowing when, not knowing if she could survive his reaction. The girls were with Laurel, who took one look at Tyra's face and knew something seismic had shifted in their carefully constructed world. He found you. He never stopped looking. Tyra collapsed onto the couch like her strings had been cut. His mother lied to both of us, intercepted everything, made sure we never connected, made sure I stayed gone. What are you going to do? I don't know. Talk to him tomorrow, see if there's anything left worth salvaging, see if the man I fell in love with still exists under 6 years of damage and regret. Are you going to tell him about the girls? I don't know. Not yet. Not until I know if I can trust him. Not until I'm sure he won't what? Love his own daughters? Won't destroy the peace we've built, won't bring his toxic family into their lives, won't reject them the way he rejected me, won't be there for a while and then disappear when things get difficult. He didn't reject you. He made a scared, stupid mistake driven by panic and manipulation. That almost destroyed me. Tyra's voice broke completely. I can't let him do that to them. I can't risk their hearts on someone who might run when things get complicated. But that night, lying awake staring at her ceiling while her daughters slept peacefully, Tyra admitted the terrifying truth to herself. She'd never stopped loving him. 6 years of hurt and anger hadn't killed the love. It had just buried it under layers of protection that were now crumbling. And that made everything infinitely more dangerous, because loving someone who'd hurt her once meant giving them the power to hurt her again. And this time, she had 3 small hearts to protect beyond her own 3 innocent lives that didn't deserve to be collateral damage in their parents' complicated history. The question wasn't whether Brent deserved a second chance. The question was whether she could survive giving him one, whether her daughters could survive meeting a father who might love them and leave them broken, and Tyra didn't have an answer. Chapter 6. Innocence Exposes Truth. Coffee became daily walks through the small town. Walks became long conversations that stretched past sunset, sitting on park benches while they rebuilt connection. Molecule by molecule, Brent and Tyra talked about everything. His father's slow recovery, her school's growth, the years they'd lost, the mistakes they'd made, the people they'd become in the absence of each other. But Tyra still hadn't told him about Cher, Ty, and Dion. The secret grew heavier each day, pressing on her chest like physical weight. My school's having an open house this weekend, Tyra mentioned during one of their conversations, heart hammering at her own daring. Community event. Performances, art displays, all the students showing what they've learned. It's chaotic, but beautiful. I'd love to come support the program, see what you've built. It's casual, nothing fancy, just parents and neighbors and kids being loud and messy. Nothing like the formal events you're probably used to. Then I'll fit right in. I'm tired of formal events, tired of pretending everything has to be polished and perfect. Tyra's stomach twisted violently. The girls would be performing, Brent would see them, but maybe in a crowd, with dozens of other children running around, he wouldn't notice the resemblance, wouldn't see himself reflected in 3 small faces, wouldn't realize what she'd kept from him. The open house filled Harmony House with chaos and joy, and the kind of noise that comes from happy children showing off for proud parents. Kids sang, played instruments with varying degrees of success, displayed paintings and sculptures made from recycled materials. Proud parents filmed everything on phones, called out encouragement, applauded every performance like they were watching greatness being born. Tyra moved through the crowd, greeting families, accepting compliments, trying not to watch the door, trying not to panic about what was about to happen. Then Brent arrived, and Tyra's heart stopped functioning correctly. He looked different here, less polished, more relaxed, wearing jeans and a simple shirt that made him look approachable. He brought flowers for her and generous donations for the school, then settled in to watch the performances with genuine interest that wasn't performed or polite. Cher, Ty and Dion were scheduled to perform last. They'd written a song together about family with Cher on piano, Ty singing lead and Dion keeping rhythm on a small drum. Tyra watched them take their positions, so proud her chest ached with it, so terrified she might vomit. Brent sat forward, attention caught by something. Tyra followed his gaze and felt reality collapse around her like a building demolition. The girls looked like him. Devastatingly, unmistakably like him. Cher had his exact eye color and shape, that distinctive green-brown that photographs could never capture accurately. Ty had his smile, the way his mouth curved asymmetrically. Dion had his grandmother's distinctive features that Tyra remembered from photographs on his phone. That strong jawline, those high cheekbones. Together, they were undeniably his daughters. No question, no possibility of coincidence. Brent stood slowly, face draining of color like someone had opened a valve. He looked at Tyra across the crowded room with an expression of absolute devastation, mixed with wonder and fury and love. The girls finished their song to enthusiastic applause, completely unaware of the earthquake happening among the adults, oblivious to how their existence had just detonated in their father's consciousness. Little Dion spotted Brent in the crowd and, with the fearless confidence of a child who'd been raised to believe strangers could be friends, ran over to him without hesitation. "Hi, are you Mama's friend from New York? She talks about you sometimes when she thinks we're sleeping. She says your name all sad-like." Brent looked down at this small person, who had his mother's nose and his own stubborn chin, who was smiling up at him with complete trust and couldn't speak. His mouth opened, but no sound emerged. Cher appeared, protective as always, moving between her sister and the strange man. "Dion, don't bother the man. Mama says we should be polite to guests." "I'm not bothering. I'm being friendly. There's a difference." Dion looked back at Brent with curious intensity. "Do you like our song? We wrote it ourselves. Cher did the music part and Ty did the words and I did the beats." "It was beautiful," Brent managed, voice completely wrecked, barely holding himself together. "You're all very talented. Extraordinary." Ty drifted over, curious and artistic, examining Brent like he was a painting she needed to understand. "Are you crying? Why are you sad at a happy party? That doesn't make sense." "I'm not sad. I'm just—" His voice broke completely. "I'm overwhelmed by how extraordinary you are, all three of you." Tyra reached them, gathering her daughters with hands that shook visibly. "Girls, go help Aunt Laurel with refreshments now." "But I want to talk to Mama's friend," Dion protested, confused by the sudden urgency. "Now, baby, please, this is not negotiable." Something in Tyra's tone made all three girls obey without further argument, though they kept looking back curiously, wondering what they'd done wrong. Why Mama looked scared. Brent and Tyra stood in the middle of the crowded room, worlds away from everyone around them, despite being surrounded by noise and people. "We need to talk," Brent said, voice barely controlled. "Outside, right now, before I lose my mind completely." They walked to the parking lot in silence, so loud it screamed between them. Once away from witnesses, once hidden behind buildings where no one could see them fall apart, Brent turned on her with devastation and fury, warring in his expression. "Those are my daughters." Not a question. A statement of fact that couldn't be denied. "Yes. You've kept them from me for 6 years. 6 years, Tyra. You let me miss everything. You left me cash on a nightstand." Tyra's voice was steel wrapped around broken glass. "Your mother called me a harassment case and threatened to destroy me. What exactly did you expect me to do? Come begging to a family that made it clear I was nothing but an embarrassment? Tell me I had children. You had no right to make that decision alone. No right to keep them from me. Those are my daughters and you stole 6 years of their lives from me." I had every right to protect them from a family that would see them as problems instead of blessings, from a man who paid me to disappear like I was something to be ashamed of, from a life where they'd be scandals instead of celebrated. I gave them love and stability and a home where they were wanted. What would you have given them? Access to a grandmother who hates their mother, a father who runs when things get complicated. I would have loved them. Brent's voice cracked completely, tears streaming down his face openly. How could you think I wouldn't have loved them? They're beautiful and perfect and mine, and I've missed everything. First steps and first words and first everything. You took that from me. Because you didn't love me enough to fight for me. You didn't love me enough to question your mother's lies. You didn't love me enough to keep looking when the first few investigators failed. Why would I trust you with the most precious things in my entire world when you couldn't even fight for us? That's not fair. None of this is fair, Tyra shouted, years of containment finally breaking like a dam. You want to talk about rights, about what's fair? You weren't the one carrying 3 babies alone while working double shifts. You weren't the one delivering them with only a friend holding your hand. You weren't the one sitting in hospital rooms making decisions about their lives with nobody to help. You weren't there. You had no right to be there, and they turned out perfect anyway, without you, despite everything. I lost years. Tears streamed down Brent's face openly. No attempt to hide them. I lost watching them grow, lost first words and first steps and bedtime stories and everything that matters. I lost knowing them as babies, lost holding them when they were tiny, lost everything a father should have. And whose fault is that? Mine for protecting them from rejection, or yours for leaving in the first place? For being too weak to stand up to your mother? For believing her lies instead of trusting what we had? They stared at each other, both crying now. Both right and both wrong, both wounded beyond quick healing. What are their names? Brent finally asked quietly, voice broken. Cher, Ty, and Dion. How old? They just turned 6. 3 months ago I made them a cake, sang happy birthday, gave them everything I could afford. We had a party with their friends from school. They were happy. Tell me about them, please. Tell me everything, every detail. I need to know everything I missed. And despite her anger, despite her fear, despite everything screaming at her to protect her daughters from this man who'd hurt her so deeply, Tyra found herself talking, describing pregnancies and births, personalities and quirks, struggles and triumphs, favorite foods and bedtime rituals, and the million tiny details that made each girl uniquely herself. Brent listened like every word was sacred text, memorizing details of lives he'd missed, trying to fill 6 years of absence with minutes of description. Can I meet them properly? He finally asked, voice raw. Can I be part of their lives? I know I don't deserve it. I know I failed you. But please, Tyra, please don't keep me from my daughters. They're mine, and I love them already, and I need to know them. I don't know. Tyra wiped her face roughly. They don't know who you are. They don't know they have a father. I've told them you live far away and don't know about them, which was true until about 20 minutes ago. But now I know, and everything's different. Everything has to change. Nothing's different. You're still the man who left. Your mother is still toxic. Your family still doesn't want us. The only thing that's changed is your awareness of what you lost. Let me prove I've changed. Let me show them, show you, that I can be what they deserve, what you all deserve. They deserve consistency. They deserve someone who won't break their hearts, someone who'll stay when things get difficult. Can you be that person? Yes, I swear. Let me prove it. Then one supervised visit this weekend, here, where they're comfortable. And if you do anything to hurt or confuse them, you're done forever. I will take them somewhere you'll never find us, and you'll never see them again. Are we clear? Thank you. Brent's relief was palpable, visible in every line of his body. I swear I won't let you down. I swear I'll be what they need. But as Tyra walked back inside to explain to three curious daughters why Mama's friend made her cry, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just opened a door she might never be able to close again. And somewhere in the chaos of her emotions, anger, fear, hope, pain, love that had never actually died, lived the terrifying truth she still couldn't speak aloud. She'd never stopped loving him, and now he was about to become part of the lives she'd built so carefully without him. Everything was about to change in ways she couldn't control or predict, and there was no going back to the simple life they'd had before he knew. Chapter 7. Battle Lines. Constance King descended on Georgia like a storm that had been building for years. She arrived in a car that cost more than most houses, wearing designer clothes, carrying entitlement like armor. Tyra was at Harmony House when Constance walked in without knocking, looking around the modest space with barely concealed contempt. "So this is where my son has been wasting his time." "This is private property," Tyra said evenly. "You need to leave. I need to see my grandchildren. You have no grandchildren here. Don't insult us both with lies." Constance's smile was poisonous. "My people are very thorough. 3 girls. Born 9 months after that unfortunate night. I assume you've been bleeding my son dry for support?" "I've never taken a penny from him." "How noble." The sarcasm dripped. "You want me to believe you're raising his children in this place out of pure altruism?" "I'm raising my daughters because they're mine. Brent was a mistake I've paid for. You don't get to waltz in here and I get to do whatever I want." Constance stepped closer, voice dropping to cold certainty. "Those girls are king blood. They have rights, inheritance, status, things you could never provide in this pathetic attempt at respectability. Get out. I'm offering you a chance to do the right thing, a very generous settlement. Enough money to actually give those children proper educations, proper lives. All you have to do is sign custody to me and disappear. We'll tell them you died. They'll never remember you existed." Tyra laughed, sharp and furious. "You think I'd sell my daughters? I think you're practical enough to recognize when you're outmatched. I have lawyers who could bury you, investigators who could find every mistake you've made, connections who could destroy this little music school in a week, or you could take the money, start fresh somewhere else, and let your daughters have the life they deserve. The life they deserve is with someone who actually loves them, not a woman who sees them as possessions to control. Love doesn't pay for college. Love doesn't open doors. Love is a fairy tale people like you tell yourselves to feel better about having nothing. I have everything that matters, and you can't buy it, steal it, or lawyer it away." Constance studied her with something almost like respect. "You're more formidable than I expected, but you're still fighting a battle you can't win. My son has responsibilities. Those children are complications that will be managed one way or another. Then manage this. You come near my daughters again, I'll make sure every person in this town knows exactly what kind of woman you are." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm promising you. Stay away from my family." Constance left with a final warning. "This isn't over. You just made an enemy you can't afford." Tyra locked the door behind her and called Brent immediately. "Your mother was just here, offering me money to disappear with the girls and tell them I'm dead." Silence. Then, "I'm coming over." Brent arrived looking wrecked. He'd been working to build a relationship with Cher, Ty, and Dion over carefully supervised visits. The girls were warming to him slowly, Dion instantly charmed, Ty cautiously optimistic, Cher protective and skeptical. "I need to tell you something," Brent said, pulling out folders. "I've been investigating my mother's past actions. These are detective reports from 6 years ago. She intercepted them, buried them. You were telling the truth. You did try to find me." Tyra looked through papers documenting her search, noting her visits, listing her attempts. Seeing it in black and white made the betrayal fresh. "I'm cutting her off completely," Brent continued, "removing her from anything involving the girls. restructuring my life so she has no leverage, but she won't go quietly. She'll fight dirty. She already is. Threatened to destroy my school, my reputation, everything. Let her try. I'll fight her with everything I have. He took Tyra's hands. I'm choosing you, choosing them, choosing the life I should have fought for 6 years ago. The next days proved Constance wasn't making empty threats. Inspectors showed up at Harmony House, citing code violations that didn't exist. Parents started receiving anonymous letters about Tyra's questionable past. Local donors mysteriously withdrew support, but Brent fought back. He hired lawyers who shut down false allegations, investigators who exposed Constance's manipulation. He moved to Georgia permanently, renting an apartment near Tyra's house, building a life close to his daughters. The girls were confused by suddenly having a father. Cher remained suspicious. Ty was curious. Dion declared him pretty cool for a grown-up. One afternoon, Brent sat on Tyra's porch while the girls played in the yard. Cher asked me today why I wasn't there when they were born, he said quietly. What did you tell her? The truth, that I made terrible mistakes, that I let fear control me, that I didn't fight hard enough for what mattered. What did she say? She said mistakes are okay if you fix them, but I have a lot of fixing to do before she decides if she likes me. Tyra smiled. That sounds like her. She's protecting you. They all are. They love you so fiercely. Brent looked at Tyra with something raw in his expression. You raised incredible humans without any help. You're the strongest person I've ever met. I did what had to be done. You did what most people couldn't have done, and I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but watching you with them, seeing the life you built, Tyra, I'm in awe of you. She didn't respond. Couldn't, because her walls were cracking. That night, Constance called Brent with her final ultimatum. Come home. Cut ties with those children and that woman, or I'll file for emergency custody claiming you're mentally unfit and she's negligent. I have doctors who will testify to anything I need. Brent listened and made his choice. Do your worst. I'm done being your puppet. I'm done choosing your approval over people I love. You'll lose. You'll regret this. The only thing I regret is not standing up to you years ago. I regret letting you control my life. I regret not fighting for Tyra when it mattered, but I don't regret my daughters, and I won't regret choosing them over you. He hung up and knew the real battle was just beginning. But for the first time, Brent was fighting for something real, and he'd burn his entire old life down before letting anyone hurt his family again. Chapter 8. The Price of Love. The charity gala was the kind of event Brent used to attend without thinking. Expensive clothes, expensive people, expensive causes that made wealthy donors feel good about themselves. Now it felt like enemy territory, like walking into a battlefield wearing formal wear instead of armor. Tyra stood beside him, wearing a dress Laurel had insisted she borrow, looking more beautiful than anyone in the room, despite her obvious discomfort. The girls were home with a babysitter, safe and oblivious to the war being waged over their existence. You don't have to do this, Tyra whispered, as they entered the ballroom full of Brent's former life. You're throwing away everything you built, your entire social network. I'm throwing away a life that was killing me. This needs to happen. It's time everyone knew the truth. Constance was holding court near the auction tables, surrounded by her usual circle of society women who treated gossip like currency. She went rigid when she saw Brent enter with Tyra, fury flashing across her carefully maintained expression before the mask returned. Halfway through the evening, during the speeches and presentations, Brent approached the microphone. The host looked confused. He wasn't scheduled to speak, but handed it over anyway. I'm not scheduled to speak tonight, but I need to share something important with everyone here. He looked directly at his mother, watching her go pale. 6 years ago, I met an extraordinary woman. I fell in love in one night, then made the cowardly choice to run when things got complicated. I left her alone, And she did something miraculous. She built an amazing life and raised 3 daughters who are the best thing that's ever happened to me. The room went silent. Whispers died. Constance stood frozen, realizing what was happening, unable to stop it. I have 3 daughters, Cher, Ty, and Dion. They're 6 years old, brilliant, creative, and fierce. Their mother raised them alone because my family made her feel unwelcome and unwanted. That ends tonight. I'm publicly acknowledging my daughters and the woman who's shown me what strength and integrity actually look like. Her name is Tyra Banks, and she's built a music school that changes children's lives while receiving none of the recognition or support she deserves. He held up documents for everyone to see. I'm also announcing my resignation from the family business effective immediately. I'll be establishing a foundation to support arts education programs like Harmony House and dedicating my life to being the father my daughters deserve and the partner Tyra should have had from the beginning. Whispers erupted into chaos. Cameras flashed. Constance's face was marble rage, cracks showing in her perfect facade. Brent turned to Tyra, speaking directly to her while hundreds of people watched. I know I don't deserve you. I know I have years of mistakes to make up for, but I love you. I love our daughters. And I'm done hiding or apologizing for the best thing in my life, done pretending that what we have isn't worth fighting for. Tyra's eyes filled with tears. She refused to let fall, refused to show weakness in front of these people who'd never know what survival really meant. Around them, the gala descended into chaos. Some people appalled, others charmed, everyone shocked by the public declaration. Constance approached with a smile that promised murder, voice low enough only they could hear. That was quite a performance, very dramatic, very foolish. That was the truth, something you wouldn't recognize if it was documented and notarized. You've destroyed your reputation, your career, your standing in every circle that matters. You'll be persona non grata everywhere that counts. I freed myself from a life that was killing me slowly from your control and manipulation. Thank you for forcing my hand and making this easier. Constance turned to Tyra with venom barely contained. Enjoy your victory. It won't last. I'll find ways to make you regret this humiliation, ways you can't imagine. Spend your energy however you want, Tyra said calmly, meeting her eyes without flinching. But those girls will never know you. You made your choice when you tried to erase us, when you treated us like problems instead of people. Now live with that choice forever. They left the gala early, escaping to a quiet diner where they could process what had just happened, where they could breathe without performing. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen, Tyra said, hands still shaking slightly from adrenaline. You just burned every bridge you have in front of hundreds of witnesses. Maybe both brave and stupid, but necessary. She needed to know I'm serious, that she can't manipulate or threaten her way into our lives, that I choose you and the girls over everything she represents. You just burned every professional connection, every social tie, everything you built your life on. I burned bridges to places I never wanted to go anyway, to a life that felt like slow death. Brent reached across the table, taking her hand. I meant what I said up there, about loving you. I know it's complicated. I know trust is broken. But whatever chance you're willing to give me, friendship, co-parenting, someday maybe more, I'll take it and treasure it. I can't love you yet. The honesty hurt to speak, scraped her throat raw. Too much damage happened, too much time passed, but I'm starting to trust you, watching you with the girls, seeing you fight your mother, choosing us over everything. It means something. It's changing how I see you. Then I'll keep proving myself, however long it takes. However much work is required, I'll earn back what I destroyed. Over the following weeks, Brent's public acknowledgement had consequences that rippled through his former life. Society pages buzzed with scandal and speculation. His mother's friends cut him off completely. Business contacts disappeared like they'd never existed. But support came from unexpected places, people who'd been controlled by Constance themselves, who saw Brent's defiance as inspiration, who reached out offering friendship and solidarity. Meanwhile, Brent continued building relationships with his daughters with dedication that bordered on obsession. He attended every school performance, learned to braid hair through countless YouTube tutorials and patient instruction from Laurel, sat through endless tea parties with stuffed animals who had elaborate backstories. Dion declared him officially cool now. Ty wrote a song about having a dad that made everyone cry. Cher remained cautiously optimistic, testing his commitment with impossible questions and philosophical debates that challenged his worldview. If you had to choose between saving Mama or saving us, who would you save? Cher asked one afternoon, examining him with intensity that made him uncomfortable. That's not fair, Brent protested. You can't ask me to choose. Life's not fair. Adults say that all the time. Answer the question. I'd save all of you or die trying. That's the only acceptable answer. What if that wasn't possible? What if you could only save some of us? Then I'd make it possible. Because losing any of you isn't an option I accept ever. Cher considered this with serious concentration, then nodded decisively. Okay, you can stay, you passed the test. I can stay. You passed the test. You can be our dad officially now, not just on trial. But if you mess up badly, I'm demoting you back to probation, clear? Brent pulled her into a hug, overwhelmed by acceptance he'd worked so hard to earn. Deal, crystal clear. Tyra watched these moments from the sidelines, seeing the father she'd hoped Brent could be emerging in real time. Her heart was thawing despite her best efforts to keep it frozen and protected. She caught herself noticing how he looked when he smiled at their daughters, how gentle he was with their fears, how patient he remained through their testing and questions. One night after the girls were asleep, Brent and Tyra sat on her porch watching stars emerge. Tell me about the pregnancy, he said quietly, voice heavy with regret. I want to know everything I missed, every detail, even the painful parts. So she told him. About morning sickness that lasted all day, about working while barely able to stand, about the fear and loneliness and determination that carried her through, about labor that felt endless, about holding each baby for the first time and feeling her heart multiply. Brent listened with tears streaming down his face, mourning lost time and the woman who'd survived it alone. I'm so sorry, he whispered, voice breaking, for all of it. For leaving, for not fighting, for every single thing you had to do alone, for missing everything important. I survived, we all did. We're here and whole. You didn't just survive. You thrived. You created something beautiful from my worst mistake, from my cowardice and fear. Tyra leaned her head on his shoulder, allowing closeness she'd forbidden herself for years. They're pretty amazing, aren't they? They're perfect, just like their mother. I'm far from perfect. I'm broken in ways I'll never fix. You're perfect for me, you always were. Even broken, especially broken, you're everything. But even in that moment of connection, Tyra held back the final piece of her heart because forgiveness required more than pretty words and present behavior. It required time and proof and the absolute certainty that she wouldn't be abandoned again, and she wasn't ready to give that yet. Even if part of her desperately wanted to, even if her heart was already halfway there despite her mind's protests. Chapter 9. Storms Before Calm. Constance's final assault came through legal channels and public destruction, orchestrated with precision. Papers were filed claiming Tyra had embezzled from Harmony House, citing irregularities in the school's finances that existed only in fabricated documents created by experts who owed Constance favors. News outlets picked up the story, painting Tyra as a fraud who'd seduced a wealthy man, trapped him with children, and built her entire life on deception and stolen money. Parents started withdrawing students in panic. Donors cancelled commitments citing concerns about financial management. The bank sent foreclosure notices, Everything Tyra had built over 6 years was crumbling under the weight of manufactured scandal. "I can't fight this," Tyra said, surrounded by legal documents she couldn't afford to defend against, drowning in paperwork and accusations. "She's too powerful. She's going to destroy everything, take everything I built from nothing." "No, she's not. We're fighting back." Brent hired investigators who uncovered proof of Constance's document forgery, found the people she'd paid to create false evidence, lawyers who exposed her coordinated campaign of harassment through threatening cease-and-desist letters, financial experts who demonstrated Harmony House's complete legitimacy through independent audits. "We're fighting back with truth. It's the only weapon that matters." But the damage was spreading faster than they could contain it, like infection racing through a body. The community Tyra had built was fracturing under pressure. People who'd supported her suddenly avoided eye contact on streets, whispers followed her everywhere. Former friends crossed to the other side when they saw her coming. The girls noticed. Of course they noticed. Children always notice when the world turns cold. "Why does everyone look at us funny now?" Dion asked, confusion and hurt in her young eyes. "Why did Mara's mum say we can't play together anymore?" Ty looked heartbroken, unable to understand adult cruelty. Cher was the most direct, the most aware. "Are we bad people? Did we do something wrong? Is it because of us that everyone's mad at Mama?" Tyra gathered them close, fighting tears, trying to be strong when she felt completely broken. "You are good, wonderful, perfect people. Some adults are making mistakes right now, telling lies about us because they're scared or mean or manipulated, but it'll be okay. Mama's going to fix it. I promise." "How?" Cher demanded, practical and scared, and needing concrete answers. "How can you fix it when everyone believes the lies?" "By being strong, by telling the truth over and over until people listen, by not giving up even when it feels impossible." But privately, Tyra was breaking into pieces. She called Laurel in tears that night, completely falling apart. "I can't do this anymore. She's too powerful. She's going to take everything, the school, my reputation, maybe even the girls. I can't fight someone with unlimited resources." "Then we rebuild. We've done it before. We'll do it again." "I'm so tired of rebuilding, tired of fighting, tired of being strong when all I want is to collapse and never get up again." For the first time since the girls were born, Tyra allowed herself to completely fall apart. She sobbed until she had nothing left, until her throat was raw and her eyes swollen, then sat in empty silence while Laurel held her and whispered reassurances. Neither of them believed Brent found her there when he stopped by with dinner, immediately sensing the crisis. He sent Laurel home gently, sat beside Tyra on the floor, and simply held her, while she finally let all the walls crumble completely. "I can't keep fighting your mother," Tyra whispered against his chest, voice wrecked. "She'll never stop. She has infinite resources, and I have nothing. She's going to win and destroy everything I built. Take my daughters, ruin my life. You're the strongest person I know. You'll survive this. I'm tired of being strong. I don't want to be strong anymore. I just want peace. I want my daughters to grow up without this constant battle hanging over them. I want to stop feeling like I'm one mistake away from losing everything that matters." "You won't lose anything, I promise. I'll fight for you. I'll protect you." "You can't promise that. Nobody can promise that against someone like her." They sat in silence for a long time, just breathing together. Then Tyra asked the question she'd been avoiding, the question that terrified her. "Why did you really come back? The absolute truth." "Because I love you. Because I never stopped loving you, even when I thought you were gone forever. Because seeing you again reminded me what being alive feels like instead of just existing." "That's not enough. Love isn't enough to fix this much damage, to overcome this much hurt. Then what is enough? Tell me what you need and I'll give it to you, whatever it takes. I need to know you won't leave again. That when things get hard, and they will get harder before they get better, you won't panic and run like before. I need to know you're choosing us, not because of obligation or guilt, but because we're what you actually want, even when we're difficult. You are. You're all I want. This life with you and the girls is the only thing that's ever felt real, the only thing worth fighting for. Words are easy, actions are what matter. Anyone can say the right things. Then watch my actions. I've cut off my mother completely, burned every bridge to my old life, liquidated assets to save your school, moved my entire life here to be near you. What else do I need to do to prove I'm not leaving? What proof will be enough? Just don't leave. When it gets ugly and hard, when I'm difficult and closed off, when the girls are impossible and exhausting, when life is messy and complicated and nothing like the fairy tale you might have imagined, don't leave, stay and fight with me. I won't leave. I swear on everything I am, on everything I love, I won't leave you again. Ever. Tyra looked up at him with exhausted, tear-swollen eyes that had seen too much pain. I want to believe you so badly it hurts. Then try. Please. Give me that chance to prove it's not just words. For the first time in years, Tyra let herself lean completely on someone else. She fell asleep against Brent's chest, and he held her through the night, exactly like he should have done 6 years ago, making up for lost time one moment at a time. The next morning brought unexpected support from an unlikely source. Brent's father, recovered enough to speak again, though haltingly, released a public statement condemning Constance's actions and acknowledging his granddaughters with pride and love. Former business associates came forward with their own stories of Constance's manipulations over the years, exposing her pattern of control and cruelty. The fabricated evidence against Tyra started falling apart under scrutiny from independent investigators. But Constance had one final move, one last weapon emergency custody filing, claiming Brent was mentally unstable due to his erratic behavior and sudden life changes, and Tyra was unfit due to the financial scandal and inability to provide stable environment. The court date was set for 2 weeks away. Cher overheard Tyra and Brent discussing it in hushed voices and asked the question that broke both adults' hearts completely. Are they going to take us away from you? Take us to live with that mean lady who hates us? No, baby, never. I won't let that happen. I'll fight with everything I have. But you can't control what judges decide. Cher was 6 going on 60, understanding far too much, seeing through adult reassurances. I heard you say that to Aunt Laurel. You said even good people lose sometimes when they fight people with money. We're going to fight, and we're going to win because truth matters. What if we don't? What if they take us to that mean lady who tried to buy us? What happens then? Tyra pulled all 3 girls into her arms, holding them like she could physically prevent anyone from taking them. Then Mama will move heaven and earth to get you back. I'll fight until I have nothing left, but it won't come to that. I promise you, it won't come to that. That night, Tyra couldn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table surrounded by evidence, testimony, documents, building her case piece by piece, preparing for battle. Brent found her there at dawn, still working, running on determination and fear. You need rest. I need my daughters safe. Rest can wait. They will be safe. We have truth on our side. Truth doesn't always win. Sometimes power wins, sometimes money wins. Sometimes people with resources destroy people without them just because they can. Then we'll fight with everything we have until we win. But Tyra, no matter what happens in that courtroom, you're the best mother those girls could have. Don't ever forget that. Don't let her make you doubt yourself. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the man she'd fallen in love with that first night, vulnerable and honest and entirely present. I'm terrified, she admitted, letting him see her fear. More terrified than I've ever been. What if I lose them? What if all my fighting isn't enough? You won't lose them, we won't lose them. But we're terrified together. That has to count for something. The morning of the court hearing, Tyra dressed carefully, braided the girl's hair with shaking hands, and prepared to fight the most important battle of her life. She'd survived poverty and abandonment and single motherhood. She'd built something beautiful from nothing. She'd protected her daughters through everything, and she'd be damned if Constance King would destroy that now. But as they walked into the courthouse, Tyra allowed herself one moment of vulnerability, reaching for Brent's hand and holding on like he was the only solid thing in a tilting world. He squeezed back, and for the first time, Tyra let herself believe he might actually stay. That maybe, despite everything, they could win this together. Chapter 10. The Reckoning. The courtroom was smaller than Tyra expected, more intimate, which somehow made everything more intense. Constance King sat across the aisle looking composed and confident, surrounded by expensive lawyers who treated this custody battle like routine business, just another case to win. Judge Hamilton was a woman in her 60s who'd seen every kind of family dispute imaginable. She reviewed documents with careful attention while lawyers presented opening statements that painted opposing pictures of reality. Constance's attorney painted Tyra as unstable, financially irresponsible, manipulative, using 3 innocent children to trap a wealthy man. They presented the fabricated evidence of embezzlement, character witnesses who questioned Tyra's judgment, testimony suggesting she deliberately kept the children from their father out of pure spite and greed. Tyra's attorney countered with documented truth. Bank records proving every penny at Harmony House was accounted for through independent audit testimony from community members about Tyra's dedication and integrity. Documentation of Constance's interference 6 years ago, her threats, her campaign of harassment. But the turning point came when Tyra took the stand and spoke truth with devastating precision. "Miss Banks, why didn't you inform Mr. King about the pregnancy?" the opposing attorney demanded, trying to make her look guilty. "I tried, multiple times. His mother intercepted me, called me a harassment case, threatened legal action if I continued. I was alone, pregnant with triplets. Terrified, I made the choice to protect my daughters from a family that viewed them as problems rather than blessings to celebrate." "You're saying you had their best interests at heart when you denied them a father?" "I'm saying I gave them everything I could: love, stability, a home where they were celebrated for existing. I didn't deny them a father. His mother did. His choices did. I worked 3 jobs while pregnant with triplets because I refused to let them grow up believing they were unwanted complications or shameful secrets." "Mrs. King contends you're unfit." "Mrs. King," Tyra interrupted, voice steady and powerful, "has never met my daughters. She's never asked about their interests, their dreams, what makes them laugh or cry. She doesn't know that Cher wants to be an architect, that Ty paints because colors help her understand feelings, that Dion believes she can befriend anyone if she tries hard enough. She knows nothing about them except that they threaten her control over her son. She doesn't want them. She wants to control them." Then Tyra did what she'd been preparing for weeks, what would either save them or destroy her. She presented evidence that dismantled Constance completely. "These are recordings from the past 3 months. Mrs. King admitting to fabricating financial documents. Mrs. King instructing associates to spread damaging rumors. Mrs. King explicitly stating her goal was to eliminate the problem of my daughter's existence." Tyra looked directly at Constance. She doesn't want custody because she loves these children. She wants custody because she views them as assets to control or weapons to use against her son. They're not people to her. They're leverage. The courtroom erupted into chaos. Constance's lawyers scrambled desperately. The judge called for order. Additional evidence emerged, testimony from people Constance had destroyed over the years using similar tactics. Documentation of emotional abuse inflicted on Brent throughout his life. Medical records showing his father's stroke was stress-related, directly connected to Constance's controlling behavior and constant manipulation. When Brent took the stand, he spoke with devastating honesty that left no room for doubt. "My mother taught me that love was weakness and control was strength. She manipulated every relationship I had, isolated me from anyone who threatened her authority, and made me believe I owed her my entire life because of sacrifices she never actually made." When I met Tyra, I felt alive for the first time ever. Then I ran because my mother convinced me that choosing happiness was betraying family. I lost 6 years with my daughters because I believed her lies. I won't lose another day, not one more day. Judge Hamilton reviewed everything methodically, taking her time, clearly understanding the stakes. Then she made her ruling with calm authority. I'm denying Mrs. King's petition for custody. Furthermore, I'm granting a restraining order preventing her from contacting the minor children without explicit permission from both parents. The evidence presented demonstrates a clear pattern of harassment, manipulation, and deliberate interference in family relationships. This court finds no basis for questioning Miss Banks's fitness as a mother. Quite the opposite. She's demonstrated extraordinary dedication under impossible circumstances. Constance stood rigid, defeat etched into every line of her face, her power crumbling publicly. This isn't over, she hissed at Tyra, venom undisguised. Yes, it is. You lost. Now live with it and leave us alone. Outside the courthouse, Tyra collapsed into Brent's arms, shaking with relief so intense it felt physical. It's over. We won. They're safe. You won. You were incredible up there, fearless. We both won. We protected our daughters together. That evening, Brent's father called, his first direct contact with Tyra. His speech was still impaired, but his message was clear through halting words. Apology for enabling Constance, request to know his granddaughters without demands, hope for forgiveness he knew he didn't deserve. Come to dinner, Tyra offered, surprising herself with immediate generosity. Tomorrow, no pressure, just family, just meeting your granddaughters. The dinner was awkward and beautiful, and everything family should be. Brent's father sat in his wheelchair, crying quietly while watching 3 little girls who looked like his son and had their mother's fierce spirit. Cher approached him cautiously. Are you our grandpa? He nodded, unable to speak through emotion. Do you like music? Another nod. Then we'll be friends. Music people are always good people, that's what Mama says. She climbed onto his lap carefully, and he held her like she was made of light and hope. Ty showed him her paintings. Dion told him elaborate stories about playground adventures. Slowly, carefully, a new family constellation formed from broken pieces. Later, after everyone left and the girls slept peacefully, Tyra and Brent sat on her porch under stars. I need to tell you something, Tyra said quietly. I forgive you. Brent went very still. What? I forgive you for leaving, for the money, for all the lost time. Not because you deserve it necessarily, but because holding on to anger was destroying me from inside. You've proven yourself, you've fought for us, you've become the father they needed, and somewhere along the way I started trusting you again, started believing you'd stay. I don't know what to say. Say you'll stay. Say you'll keep choosing us when it gets hard. Say you'll love them forever, even when they're impossible teenagers who hate us both. I'll stay. I'll choose you every single day. I'll love them and you until I stop breathing, and probably beyond that. Then that's enough. That's everything. Brent pulled her close, and Tyra let herself fully relax into his embrace for the first time in 6 years. Let herself believe in happy endings that were earned through pain and growth. I love you, he whispered. I never stopped. I love you too. Even when I hated you, I loved you. They kissed like that first night, tender and desperate and full of promises they'd finally learned how to keep around them. Their life continued, 3 sleeping daughters, a music school that had survived, a future they'd build together. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, it was something better, a real one, earned through pain and growth and the kind of love that survives being broken and comes back stronger, more resilient, more true. Inside the house, Cher stirred awake and looked out her window at her parents holding each other beneath the stars. She smiled, satisfied, and went back to sleep. Her family, was finally complete. And that, Cher decided, was the best kind of magic. The end.